Hello, nursing students. Today we're going to talk a little bit about synthesis, what that means, and how we're going to use synthesis to compose our research papers. So we're going to start by defining what synthesis means, give you a place to start, and then we're going to talk about how to use some of the documents you've already spent some time on, like your outline and your annotated bibliography, to help you actually put the synthesis together. Okay, so we're going to start out with what does synthesis mean? Okay, and to synthesize means to mesh, to interweave, or to combine separate elements to form a new coherent whole. Okay, that means you're taking different parts. For the purposes of this paper, you're taking your sources, your thesis, and your thoughts, and you're putting them together to end up with one new product, which is the research paper. Okay, so for each thesis point, you're going to write a separate synthesis. That synthesis is going to be focused on the argument you're making in your thesis for that specific point. And then you're going to combine your thoughts and your knowledge with the sources that you have read to put them all together and get to one new cohesive whole that's including the source information as well as your argument. Okay, so where do you start? To begin, you're going to work with what you've already done. You've already completed your annotated bibliography. You're either working on or have completed your outline, and you've already read all of your sources. So you've done all of the background work that you need to do to effectively write a synthesis point. Okay, once you're ready, once you've kind of looked back, you've gathered those items together so that you have them sitting with you, you just want to write. Just get it all out there on the page. Remember that you can always come back and revise at a later date. The real point is to get the information out there so that you have something to work with as you do your revisions and things like that. Okay, so just write it out, come back and revise later, get every piece of information you could possibly use out there on the page, and then you'll be able to come back later, cut things out, change the flow, add detail, reorganize, all of those sorts of things. Okay, so that's what you're doing. So your next question might be, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I know what to write? And that's where we're going to draw on the outline and the annotated bibliography. Okay, so you're going to use the outline or your note cards or your bubble graph or however you've chosen to, whatever type of organizer you've chosen to make. You're going to use that for organization. So we have in front of us here one part of a main point from a paper that was focused on the benefits of hourly rounding. And in this, she talks about hourly rounding specifically in terms of increasing patient safety. She has two other points that talk about why rounding is important. But for this one, we're just focused on patient safety. You see, we have section A and section B. There's also a section C that's not pictured here. And even though section A is a little bit smaller than section B, that's okay. The most important information is that these are different topics. So the first point is talking about restroom visits during those hourly rounds, seeing if someone needs to use the restroom so they don't get up on their own. B is talking specifically about elderly patients and the risks factors involved in most falls with them. So you see, those are the 2 points, but she's also got some nice subpoint information with her 1s and 2s and her A. In those cases, this is just delving deeper and deeper into the topic, being able to give more specific information with each point in her outline. Now, one thing I would note that when you're doing an outline, if you have a 1, you should have a 2. If you have an A, you should have a B. So under A, she has the 1. I did advise her, you need to have a 2 as well. Otherwise, 1 is kind of part of A. Okay, so make sure you're breaking things down, you're being consistent in your labeling. All right. So looking here, we have organization already built for us. We already have an order of how to present the information. So we would just write a paragraph or two on each of these points and subpoints, and we can come back later to see if that organization still is workable for how the paper looks, but at least it's giving us a way to get it out there. All right, the next thing you're going to do is use the outline to help you organize your sources. This paper was specifically talking about hospice care and having adequate pain control at the end of life. And you can see she's got a ton of different sources. She's got Bornemann et al., she's got Keenan Thompson, Ogle, McElroy, and Mays. There's Bornemann again. Barnett is there, and then Keenan Thompson are there again. So she's got a lot of different points just in these first two sections of her second main point. Okay, talking about barriers in pain control at the end of life. And you can see if you look at each of these is probably going to be a thorough paragraph on its own, each point and subpoint, but she's also going to know where to get additional information to kind of flesh out each paragraph. Part of the paragraph is going to be talking about, okay, this is what the source says, this is what I think, and combining those together. But a really great way to make your point is to be able to use a source, be able to use the credibility and the statistics and the quality information from that source to strengthen your own point. So don't forget that the reason you had those in there is so you can remember where the information came from and how you're going to distribute your sources across the paper. That's kind of why they're in the outline. And this is just a great way to remind you, go back to that source if you don't have a very strong paragraph. Go back to that source if this section is a little bit weak. Right? Next, we're going to talk about using the outline to include specific facts. You may also be able to include information from your annotated bibliography when you're talking about facts. So you can see here, this student was writing her paper on breastfeeding and how breastfeeding can help reduce childhood obesity and even obesity into adulthood. So the first point, you can see there's a 15 to 30% reduction when compared to formula-fed infants. You can see there's a study where they're talking about the specific large number of children that were part of the study. Another study with specific information. Now when we get down to E, for example, and D, you can see there's been some specific facts. It's not necessarily numbers, but they are specific facts that can be helpful in building that argument. So she's got to, flesh these out, explain why these facts are important. That's how you're going to develop each point into a paragraph, is taking this information from the source and synthesizing it with your thoughts and your discussion of why it's relevant to the thesis, why it's important for the reader to know and understand. Okay, so that should help you a little bit in terms of using the outline to get to a good strong synthesis section of your paper. Finally, you're going to use your annotated bibliography and all the work you did there on credibility to introduce your sources in the paragraph. So each paragraph should start with a strong topic sentence. Think about that as kind of a mini thesis. Something that's going to specifically say, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what the paragraph's going to introduce. Then moving into the paragraph itself, and with that point kind of going in and putting in the facts, putting in explanations, putting in examples, and then ending with your citation there. So to introduce that source, though, you're going to need the credibility information you wrote in your annotated bibliography. Okay, so for instance, this student was writing a little bit about dog training, and in her, she's talking about the ASPCA as well as an article from a specific journal. So in the first point there, she already has her information from her annotated bibliography that's talking about who the ASPCA is and why we should believe them. Okay, they were first established in 1866. They were the very first humane society. It's one of the largest organizations in the world. You know, their efforts expand throughout the United States. So that's kind of showing just how prevalent their work is and why then they're one of the big names. They're one of the people to believe in this topic. And the second one, you can see she's talking a little bit about the journal that the source came from. She's going to need to finesse that a little bit because the reader might wonder, okay, well, why do I care about this journal at the beginning? And so you might want to start with this article, which appears in the Journal of Applied Animal Behavior Science, states this. The journal was founded in 1880 and serves over 30 million scientists worldwide. So getting the information in there is good to start with, but remember, you will have to finesse it. You will have to revise and add sentences and break it up and rephrase things to make it flow properly as part of the paper. Okay? And looking back at that, maybe you don't want to talk about the journal. Maybe you just want to talk about the authors and where they've conducted their research. Okay, but use those sections of the annotated bibliography to get the credibility in there. Okay, don't forget you'll also be able to use the annotated bibliography in the sections you wrote, the summary sections, to help you start getting those facts and information in there as well. Finally, don't be shy about asking for help. Remember, I am here. This is my job. I don't have office hours, so I fully expect to use some of my free time to talk with you over email, to talk with you over the phone, to text if you prefer texting. Just know that the quickest way to get a response is by phone or text, because I typically have my phone on me, and I'll typically pick up unless I'm already on the phone or if my hands are full with another class. Know that you can also email me. I'll try to check my email every a couple times a day at least. And the biggest thing to remember is that you're halfway there. Okay, once you get this first thesis or this first synthesis point, this first thesis point written, you've got a third of the paper written and you've got half of the work done because you've already worked on the organization, you've already read your sources, you've already written quite a bit of information. So just kind of stay strong and know that you're getting there towards the end, and it will be over before you know it. So let me know if you have questions, and I hope that you'll be able to refer back to this lecture as you write your first thesis point, and then as you write the other two as well. Okay, thanks and have a great day.